Good morning, Ray Estolano, and I'm here with some esteemed guests. This is the attorney panel, or also known as the Abo Gangsters. So I have a glass for each of you. Over there we have Jason Turner, esteemed bankruptcy attorney. If you're ever in trouble, if you ever did it, or if you didn't do it, Richard Arroyo, defense attorney. And if you want protection from any type of debts or just general business knowledge, we have Everardo, Macias here with us. And so I thought we would start out with a little icebreaker. Jason, can you give us a good attorney joke to start us off?
Well, yes. I've got a few in my repertoire since that's one of my hobbies. I'll tell you all one of my favorite lawyer jokes, and that is there was a doctor, an engineer, and a lawyer, and they were all friends, and they went to lunch one day. And at lunch, they started talking about, well, what is the world's first profession? You know, the one that at the very beginning. And the doctor said, well, you know, in the Bible, in Genesis, it says that God created Adam and Eve, molded them out of the dirt of the dust of the earth and clay, and molded their bodies. So therefore, in the beginning, God must have been a surgeon. And the engineer says, oh, no. In the Bible, it says before that happened, that God created order out of chaos. So God must have been an engineer in the beginning. The lawyer says, no. Who do you think created the chaos?
That's pretty good, and that segues us to our first topic. What do you guys think about the reputation of lawyers here in America, and as a profession, is there anything we can do to change that? I'll start with you, Mr. Arroyo.
Well, I think part of the problem is a lot of politicians are lawyers, and I think the reputation of politicians is probably not very good. So I think that gives lawyers a kind of a bad reputation to begin with. But you know, there's lawyer jokes, and you know, people badmouth lawyers. But when you need one, then you have to go get one. So, and it depends on the area of the law that you practice. I mean, you know, some areas of law are easier to deal with, and then for criminal defense, I mean, you're always dealing with people that have problems, and but I think in general, people understand that the need for attorneys, and the real challenge is to find the right one that's going to, in my opinion, be honest with you and straightforward with you, and is going to tell you what you need to hear.
Okay. Jason Turner sometimes says that there are only 2 attorney jokes; the rest are real stories. But that joke aside, Mr. Macias, what do you think?
Well, you know, I definitely agree with Richard here. But, you know, there's an adage that, you know, in the U.S. or specifically California, there is definitely a lot of litigation and lawsuits. You know, from a business perspective, that is very true. But at the same time, there's also the rule of law, right? So that comes into play a lot. For me personally, I mean, I started in litigation, so because of the drain that it takes on, you know, the attorney itself and the clients or businesses, et cetera, you know, I made the transition over to the transactional side is to try to avoid those lawsuits. So, you know, it's a different way of answering the question, but it's more about fostering, you know, doing business and growing businesses and growing relationships versus the litigation side of it. So.
Okay. Jason.
Yeah, I think that in the 21st century in the United States, we've got a number of gaps, widening gaps. There's economic inequality and others. But there's also one, and that really is a driver in politics, and we're not here to talk about politics for sure, but there is a very real sense that many people in America have that there are the elites and there's everybody on the outside. And, you know, that is something that some politicians take advantage of. They talk about, they say they're an outsider. But rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of people who feel that they are not in the elite, that they're on the outside, that they are sort of shut out in many ways in America, they perceive that lawyers are part of the elite, that are part of the inside group that are controlling, manipulating everything in our country. I don't think that is true. I think that on balance, lawyers are part of the solution of problems rather than creating problems. But I think part of the lousy reputation that the legal profession has is because of this perception of many people who are, falling behind, or in many ways, they feel like lawyers are on the side of tipping the balance in the favor of the powerful, corporations and otherwise, and where we can help our clients, even individuals, small businesses, to level the playing field, so to speak. I think that we really do a great service in debunking that view out there, and that is, I think, the most effective way to undo that bad reputation that the legal profession has.
Now, if I can follow that up with a question into our next one, when you decided to become a lawyer, what were your hopes? What was your view of the legal profession?
Well, for me, I started, and I've told this even in other podcasts, like with Andy. I went into law. My original reason for going to law was I majored in history, and there were only two things I figured I could use my history degree for. One was teaching, and I didn't want to teach. The other was being a lawyer. And at the time, I didn't really sort of feel like, okay, well, what would I do? But as I was in law school, then I got to see, working in clinics and working in law offices, then I got to see how I can make a difference and also take a lot of the stress and anxiety off of my clients' shoulders, not necessarily put that on my shoulders, but find solutions so that the anxiety would go down and the sense of hope could be restored in their lives. And so and even early on, that's what I saw as, okay, that's something I can do, and that's something that's positive.
If you had to choose again, would you still be a lawyer?
Yes, I think so. For me, it's hard to think of, choosing something else, because this is the way life has been. And now, I've been in practice for a little more than 30 years, and I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Okay. How about you, Richard? Mr. Arroyo. What made you decide to go into this practice?
Well, I had tunnel vision. I graduated from San Diego State with a BS in finance, and at that point in time, I was either going to become an attorney or I was going to become a doctor. And I always enjoyed science, but I was never very good at it academically. I never got A's. So I decided, well, medicine's not for me. And I went into, became a lawyer. So once again, I had tunnel vision. And so that's how I ended up going to law school and passing the bar exam. And so I've always been in private practice. So private practice, you have your advantages. I can take the day off if I want. And there's challenges, but I've always been in private practice for over 40 years. I'm sure I'm the oldest person here. But as an attorney, I'm not wealthy by any means, but you have the ability, like Jason says, to help people. And in my criminal defense practice, helping people that, are really stressed out about potentially going to jail, that type of thing, is satisfying. Plus, as an attorney, you have a certain power. And if someone does a friend wrong, my family wrong, my dog wrong, I have the ability to file a lawsuit and to pursue it. So that kind of gives me satisfaction, I guess.
Okay, and why criminal defense? To repeat the question that I've gotten in a million carne asadas and get-togethers, if someone did this illegal action, how can you defend them?
Well, to begin with, when I started practicing law, I just opened my own office, and I just kind of gravitated to criminal defense, doing court-appointed work. So that's how I got into the criminal defense area. And I've just done it, for over 40 years. And people have asked me, well, how can you defend someone? How can you defend someone that, for instance, that's accused of a sexual offense, that type of thing? And I guess my response is, over the years, is that, everybody's entitled to a defense. And hopefully, if this person did do something like that, that person is going to have to face the consequences. I'll try the best I can, but hopefully that person can get some help and hopefully change their life in a different direction. It's like someone that has a DUI, an accident, and once again, if the person can get a hold of their, deal with their issue, then their lives can improve. But people do ask that question, and I've had other attorneys that just based on, what the offense is, criminal defense attorneys that will not represent somebody. It's just they can't do it for some reason. But maybe over the 40 years, I've kind of become immune to it. And once again, I think everybody's entitled to an attorney in the criminal defense area.
Okay. Jason Turner had to step out. All of us here are attorneys, and sometimes there's emergencies that we have to attend to. But I hope you've enjoyed what he's been able to talk with us, and we'll have him in a future episode. But now I'd like to ask Mr. Macias, what drew you to this practice? What made you decide to become an attorney?
Before I do respond, Richard, I didn't know we had a finance degree in common.
Oh.
So there you go. For me, I've mentioned this a couple of times in our B&I group, probably in my last podcast too. I actually wrote a paper on being a business attorney in 5th grade, which I wish I still had, because maybe that I could just show it to you, and that's the response, right? But along the way in life, I mean, obviously getting the finance degree at San Diego State also, we have that in common also. Then taking 3 years off and going into finance, I always kind of, had that in the back of my mind to get back into law school, which I eventually did. In law school, as you know, you can always take certain courses to kind of, it's not specialized, but, to start concentrating in certain areas. And, I just naturally gravitated to the business side of stuff. I did litigate for a few years, but even then it was, business litigation defense. But as I alluded to before, it's like, why be in the litigation side when you can kind of be more on the preventative side? You put the deals together, have the contracts in place so that, if something does happen, they're there for purposes of, getting that good business transaction, building the business relationships, et cetera. And from another standpoint, what I'll add to that is, I mean, my businesses are mainly, the smaller startups, maybe some larger ones that have been around for, 10, 20 years and get into the range of several $1 million in sales, yes. But they're still considered small businesses. And to a certain extent, it is kind of leveling the playing field with the larger corporations for these small businesses. Because like I tell my clients, for instance, if you are an S corporation, nobody knows that except for you, your accountant, because they have ink at the end of their name, and it's very similar to the ones that are on, Wall Street.
Okay, good. And litigation versus non-litigation on a personal level, as attorneys, studies say that we're among the most stressed people on the planet. How do you feel personally? Did that reduce the stress in your life? And then going further, like what do you do to manage the stress of our profession?
I think you were asking if the not doing litigation causes stress, because obviously I think that's a oxymoron as far as litigation and not stress. But yeah, the first 3 years, I mean, there was a lot of depositions. Obviously there you have 10 different attorneys or whatever around the table defending their own things. Apart from, the procedural aspects and deadlines, et cetera. So there's no question that there is a lot of stress. I was never fond of making people cry, and stuff.
Did you make people cry?
That happened a few times. We won't name names or what was asked, but even on the business side, people get emotional. I mean, even if it's a contract, that's the stress part of litigation. So somehow, when I did go out on my own, I did gravitate just to, like I said, hey, let's just work out a deal. If you have two partners, let's document everything so that it's more of a peaceful peaceful. It's kind of like in your world, the divorce side, as far as the prenup, right? The shareholder agreement. So that's a big part of what I do. Now, as far as stress, relieving in my own profession, I mean, really it is. Well, you saw me earlier. I mean, I'm low key in certain things. In my office, I mean, while I do answer my own phones and stuff, but at the same time, I'm very flexible. As far as whether it's working from home when I can, and still picking up my kid and taking her to volleyball practices. I've been to beach volleyball with her twice this week already. So that's kind of the thing that keeps me going.
Okay. How about you, Richard? First, I guess I should ask: is stress an issue for you as an attorney? And if it is, how do you handle it? Any tips for our viewers?
Well, it can be. But to get back to Jason, he's my referral partner for anything debtor creditor, anything having to do with real estate, and he is a litigator. So, that's his practice. And as far as I'm concerned, like maybe I have litigation when I'm in trial. Okay. In litigation, an attorney's in trial for, a month and a half. I mean, it can wreak havoc on your life, not only on your time and your family. So I have a lot of respect for, people that litigate, cases and that do it for months at a time. But so to get back to how I deal with stress, I think I try to look at the big picture. And I'm self-employed, and now I'm 71, so I'm kind of picking and choosing my cases. But I'm a homebody. I get a lot of satisfaction from being at home with my family and with my dogs. And that's kind of how I try to deal with stress. And to be honest with you, Mr. Estolano,
yes,
I'm not under that much stress. I'm 71, so I'm kind of at the twilight, picking and choosing my cases. So I'm not really under that much stress. But I tell you, when I do some of my juvenile court cases, representing someone under the age of 18 charged with a criminal offense, sometimes the parents are more difficult than my client. And when they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, that's true. And sometimes the parents causing more stress than the young person who's being charged with the crime. But that's kind of how, I know you are a dog lover, animal lover as well. So that's how I love animals more than I like people. But how about yourself? Can you tell us how you started practicing law as opposed to being a doctor?
Well, it was the same thing as similar to you. I was between medicine. I wanted to be a medical researcher, MD, PhD, and law. And I think just I fell in love with the idea of representing someone, speaking for them. And, as far as dogs, I think there is no greater being in this planet than a dog. I get home and it can be the toughest day. I've had a criminal deposition in the morning or preliminary hearing. I've had a litigated family law case in the afternoon, and I walk through that door and I'm feeling down, and then I see these 4 beings rushing towards me that are at that moment happier to see me than anyone else, even my wife in that day is happy to see me. And you can't help but get in a good mood. I pet the Canelo and Diego are the ones in front, and then Lola comes, and say, "Hey, how you doing, little girl?" And then the baby doggy, which is maybe 100 pounds, Beethoven, comes rushing in, and he gets a special hug, and then they fight over who gets to sit next to me on the sofa. You've got to be a pet lover to understand that. But I've often said to you, I mean, we share often our pet pictures. If there's a heaven and my doggies aren't there, maybe I don't want to go.
That's right. Yeah. If my dogs don't go to heaven, I want to go where they went.
Yeah. But since you mentioned that you're towards the end, I just got my 26th bar card in the mail last week. So 26 years doing that. Eddie looks much younger than us, but I know he's about the same.
26, 27, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
98?
99.
Okay.
So question, what advice would you guys have for young attorneys? Someone that's maybe in law school, just starting out. Any advice that you would give the younger you when you were starting out?
It's a good question, especially since, the business profession, I think, is still going to be there for a long time. I know there's a bunch of stuff about AI taking over. I mean, there is some software that I use these days, but it's really definitely follow the area that you want to get into. I mean, early on, and versus just actually it's concentrate, right? Concentrate in the area that you really want to get into. And focus. That's kind of like one of my day in day out virtues of being able to focus on what I am going to do, which for me, for the longest period of time has been the business law sector, and you naturally grow from there. But back to the AI, I mean, that's a good question as to, where that will take the business profession. I just saw something not on the attorney standpoint, but from the doctor standpoint, that AI is going to be taking a lot of their jobs in certain ways, which I'm sure is true for the legal profession too. So obviously by staying abreast of where all that's going and, being able to, maybe that'll allow attorneys to multiply themselves, but obviously stay abreast of that, which for a younger attorney, I think that's probably easier for them to do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it took me a while to get my first cell phone, and do other technological stuff, but I think I'm still pretty savvy. I still keep up with my kid. So,
do you ever use AI?
There's some AI for recently I got, I think Adobe has a side thing just for contracts for summaries. So in that sense, it is a good thing to help you review or where to maybe highlight certain things. But you still need to, at least on my end, as far as a contract review, you still need to look at the details because, I don't know how foolproof AI is, but I'm sure it's not there yet.
No. Richard.
Well, Ray, I've been a sole practitioner on my own for over 40 years. So my advice to anybody that's in their own practice is to plan for your retirement. I didn't necessarily plan for my retirement the way I should have, so that's one thing that I regret, but that'd be advice that I'd give a young attorney, and the two of you, and I'm sure you're doing it, but because you're much younger than I am, but just plan for your retirement. Because I always thought about retirement, it's, it'd be great, to be able to retire but not want to, as opposed to wanting to retire and not being able to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm 71 and I don't want to retire. I mean, I still want to be active. So that would be the advice that I'd give to a young attorney to begin with. And you got to kind of figure out, what interests you. I mean, any type of job, I think for anybody, you have to like what you're doing. If you're stuck in a job that you don't like, it's just not going to be fulfilling to you. It's probably going to overflow to your family. And there's so many different areas of the legal practice. I mean, you can get a law degree these days and go into the military, go into the service as an officer and make that a career. or you can get a law degree, and you don't have to practice law. You know, you can other things you can do, go into law enforcement, FBI. There's a lot of different options. You know, and I try not to go back in time once in a while, but I don't think it's healthy. But if I had to do it over again, I'd emphasize trying to perhaps become a judge, or if I was going to do criminal defense work for the public defender's office. And if I had done that, I mean, I can work for someone easy as anybody else. I'd be retired by now, have a nice pension, and or I'm also a real estate broker. So if I had to do it over again, I think I would start out my legal career working in real estate law, like maybe perhaps with Jason, and rubbing elbows with individuals that are in the real estate space, and then kind of take it from there. Because a lot of people have done quite well economically by being in real estate. You know, I'm not a big stock person. I don't know anything about it. Don't have any money. But so anyway, that would be my advice for a young attorney: is if you're going to be a sole practitioner, plan for your retirement. And you need a good financial planner for that. And I never had anybody, so.
That's good. That kind of takes me back when I was in law school. I don't know if you remember, recruiters come to law school, and, you know, law school kind of encourages you to interview with them. And the one recruiter that was really interested in me was from the FBI. You know, and sometimes I think to myself, you know, what would life have been like as an FBI agent? Mm-hmm. You know, my wife says that I probably would have gotten shot myself within the first year, and, you know, maybe I'd be back here again. But the advice that I would give for young attorneys, or really young anyone, is, and it's a cliche, but do what you love. We meet too many people in our profession that became a lawyer because they were just chasing the riches, and, you know, for some of them they're there. For many of us, they aren't. But if you don't like what you're doing, if you don't love what you're doing, it's a waste of a lot of years. You know, I still smile when I'm coming back from court. You know, when I'm in the middle of a litigation, and, you know, and I think it's I think it's a good thing. The next thing that I wanted to ask you guys about is, do you have, you know, looking back, do you have any fun stories, you know, without breaking confidences, that you want to share about an experience as an attorney? You know, it could be a war story. It could be just something that happened to you. You know, if you were, you know, had your, you know, kid sitting next to you on the bench, you know, tell me an attorney story. Like, what would you tell them?
Well, I guess I can start out representing juveniles over the years. Some of these kids, they do the wildest things. For instance, I had some kids that were driving around in a car, and there was this lady that was jogging, and she stopped at a stoplight, and they threw eggs at her, hit her in the knee, and fractured her knee to begin with. I've had some kids that were going through a drive-through at a Jack in the Box, and when they got up to the window, they had a paint gun, and they fired the paint gun at the person that was at the window. I've had some kids that were in a car, and there was these houses where the mailboxes were at curbside, so they each had a mailbox there. So they had, with a baseball bat, they were going along, and they were just hitting these mailboxes, you know, with baseball bats. Some of these kids do the stupidest things. And with social media these days, I mean, I have kids that, you know, that basically, maybe 3 kids are going to go beat somebody up, and 2 of them beat the person up, and the 3rd person is recording it with their cell phone, and they put it on social media. And I mean, and law enforcement is very, very savvy about being able to, you know, to go to social media. I don't know if you remember, there was that case up in San Bernardino where there was this couple that basically commit some type of terrorist activity, and they were trying to get into their cell phone. And Apple would not hack into their cell phone, and that caused law enforcement a big problem. I think that issue's been set to rest. I mean, these police officers, they're able to get into those cell phones. Yeah. That's just an example. And another one that's it's kind of funny. I had a client that was accused of stealing his neighbor's dog, and apparently he jumped over the fence, grabbed the dog, climbed back over the fence, and the neighbors called the police. And the police showed up, and they knocked on the door, and the young man, my client, answered the door. He was all sweaty. and apparently the dog was there, and apparently he was watching some pornography on the TV. And he had the dog, so I just kind of leave it at that. But I do remember the law enforcement officers saying that they were kind of amused, if you will, for what had happened. So that's...
Wow, that's...
Sometimes I think, Ray, I could write a book about all these, and, I mean, there's, studies that I think it's well accepted that a young person's brain doesn't fully mature until they're 25. So you have these young people, I mean, they just think in the moment. When they're in juvenile hall, they just want to get out. That's all they care about. But as parents and as an attorney, we think about their future. So these kids is, anybody that has kids can kind of appreciate some of the things they don't think. And sometimes I do that. I speak before I think, which is not a good thing.
And as an attorney, do you find yourself in the role as counselor a lot of times with them, telling them?
Sometimes. I mean, sometimes I relate my own personal stories. Sometimes I tell them, well, I was a member of a gang. And they say, oh, yeah, gang. And then my gang was my neighborhood friends. We smoked a little marijuana, did a little bit of drinking, and that was it, though. But we didn't carry weapons. We didn't claim a territory. We didn't have a bunch of tattoos acknowledging our gang, that type of thing. So on occasions, I do, share my own personal stories. And a lot of times I tell them, I'm an attorney. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. But so, I mean, I try to stay in my lane. But, yeah, I mean, that's why I enjoy working with young people. I mean, they're our future. So once again, it's the parents that are often the problem.
What's interesting, you mentioned the whole thing about counselor, because as Richard was speaking, that's what I was thinking with my clients. And as far as stories, I mean, I've seen a lot of businesses, grow from scratch or from one location, and next thing you know, they're expanding. I mean, aggressively, for lack of a better word, and they move to 2-3 locations, or they have San Diego covered, so they move to Las Vegas or whatever, and that the expansion, you can try and guide them a little, but since I'm not involved in their business day to day, it's up to them to know, what their limits are or not. But from experience, and unfortunately, there have been a few clients, that because of aggressive growth, expansion, they get in trouble, after whether it's a year, 2 years, or 3 years down the line, because, obviously the economy moves up and down. But there's been a few clients, get back to Jason Turner, that have had to refer over to him. And, those end up being Chapter 11s or Chapter 7s. But he's helped me, my clients out on a few occasions also. So it's more, those types of stories they look like success stories, but you also try to have them be a little bit conservative in their growth. But you were talking about kids, but I'm also talking about business owners that they're on track, they're one track mind, as far as growth. So I try to usually give them certain examples at the same time as maybe advise them. Well, look, do you have this covered? And usually it all boils down to money, and obviously good advisors, not necessarily just attorneys, but other advisors, right? Financial advisors, insurance advisors, etc. So I've seen that on at least with 4 or 5 different companies that have taken, that expansion, from one location to, 10 locations and stuff like that. But there's been a couple that, do succeed, but that's like any business, because we've all heard the adage, when businesses that start, 1 in 5 will be around in 5 years, something to that effect.
Wow. And do you find that to be accurate?
Yeah, maybe not specifically with my businesses that I help out, but it is a high percentage that, businesses that do not succeed, when you look at it 5 years down the line, to definitely 10 years down the line.
And I guess stepping back a moment, we're all attorneys, but we're all businessmen. I mean, we all, have to pay our expenses, pay our rent, sometimes our payroll. How do you guys balance the line between being a successful advocate, a successful counselor, and keeping the lights on.
Well, in my realm, as many people know, I wear different hats. I mean, I'm an attorney probably 75% of the time. The rest of the time, I have a few other different ventures that somehow I've delved into. I don't recommend you invest in a restaurant, but I have in the past, or currently am invested in one. That's definitely a tough business.
Is it a place that we can go check out?
Oh, yeah. Well, Oceanside Boulevard, it's called Ivaga, 1906 Oceanside Boulevard.
All right. Can we say that you sent us there?
Sure thing.
Mexican food?
Yes. Full bar. So you can
Right.
go in the evenings too. But so to keep back to your question, yeah, 75% of my time is as a legal professional. I have been involved or partnered with other attorneys in the past. For the last at least 5-6 years, I've been on my own as a true solo practicing attorney. So that obviously allows for minimizing my expenses, and also for the freedom I think that is allowed with that. But the other thing is also venturing into some let's call them side businesses.
How about you, Richard? I know that you're an attorney, but you are also a real estate professional.
I am, and I'm fortunate where I'm at. I have low overhead, and so for many, many years I was taking a lot of court-appointed cases, and that really overwhelmed my time. But I'd say the last 15 years I've backed away from that. I still take some court-appointed juvenile court cases, but the majority of my criminal cases now are retained cases. So and it's a little bit better income, but you're right. I've been a real estate broker for over 24 years, and I enjoy working with people. And that area is different than criminal defense, where people come to you with problems, and so that certainly helps supplement my income as well as my real estate practice.
You didn't mention this in the stress section, but I know that you're a person that's pretty consistently throughout the years done yoga. Can you talk about that?
Well, I did for a while. There was where my former office was. There was a yoga studio right across the street, and so I went and I paid like $60 for unlimited use. So I was there like 5 days a week. So I mean, but I'm not flexible at all. But I really enjoyed it. It was hot yoga, and it was like almost 75 minutes. So I really enjoyed it. But I've always kind of fought my weight my entire lifetime, and I wasn't losing any weight. So I decided I needed to do something more aerobic. I had to make a change. But I really enjoyed it. And it's
what do you do for exercise now?
Well, right now I just go to the gym, and I just mostly the treadmill. But I have a personal fitness referral partner that basically indicates that you need to do weight training to build up muscle. That'll help your metabolism. So I'm trying to do that as well. But I'm a member of the YMCA, and I think you're a swimmer, Ray, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And so that's what I try to do, and enjoy. It's peace of mind. But to be honest, I don't do as much exercise as I should.
How about you, as far as exercise and athletics?
I mean, I have a home gym. I'll call it a home gym. A few weights here or there, and some contraptions there. But more, it's outside. Activities. Mountain biking. When I can get out to the snow and do some snowboarding, stuff like that, or just hiking. Here locally at Mount Miguel or whatever. So, I mean, I've ran into a few people. I think I ran into our host here, Andy, once or twice out on, midday. Yeah. Out hiking. So, it's interesting, that you still see people out there at, like I said, midday on a Tuesday or Thursday. So.
Where do you like to hike locally? You mentioned Mount Miguel.
Mount Miguel, Cowles Mountain. I mean, so it's not too far away. 'Cause like I said, if it's during the week, I get to escape for 2-3 hours and and then come back to it.
Yeah.
But I do answer phones up there too. So.
Yeah, that's good. Before I got injured, there were 3 of us attorneys that used to go. We used to hike Cowles 2 or 3 times a week. And it was kind of nice. We'd get there at 6 in the morning. We'd be back in our offices by 8:30. And it's kind of beautiful, being in the outdoors in the middle of civilization.
Yeah, and I've done that hike, and my dog likes it too. So
Yeah, and a lot of dogs. One of my friends, Alex Canan, takes his dog Camilo on the hike, and it's interesting because I don't know how much you guys are in social media, but I would post the hikes online, and a friend's wife from El Centro saw it, and she wanted to try out Cal's. And so one Saturday, my friend and her joined us, and my friend asked me, how's the hike? And I said, well, I don't consider myself to be particularly athletic, so I think it's an easy hike. Turned out it wasn't. He went up about halfway, had to stop to rest, and then he would go a little bit farther. And as they were walking, the dog kept looking up at him, like really worried. Is he all right? And he had to reassure Camilo, I'm fine. I'm just resting. But it's interesting, the heart of a heart of a dog. And of course I owed him breakfast after that, because I guess I didn't realize it can be a strenuous hike if you're not consistently hiking.
and particularly if it's hot.
Have you guys, either of you, done the potato chip?
No.
It's on my list, but no, not yet.
Yeah, we should all do the potato chip one of these days.
Where's that at, Ray?
I know it's in San Diego. I don't know exactly where it is.
East County somewhere.
Okay, let's plan on it.
Yeah. Have you seen pictures of it?
I have.
Yeah.
Just waiting for it to break off.
Yeah, well, hopefully when 3 lawyers are on there, that's not when it chooses to.
A new lawyer joke.
What's that? What do you call 3 lawyers falling off a cliff? A good start, right? Okay, so anyway, I appreciate you guys coming to this podcast. It was nice being able to talk to the 3 of you. Learn a little bit about you. And before I break, any thoughts that you would like to leave the audience with?
Well, thank you for hosting, Ray. Definitely enjoyed this. It's a little out of my comfort zone, but you should try new stuff.
Yeah, I don't have anything, Ray, other than when Jason was here, I just don't think that the reputation of attorneys was that bad. But it's blame the politicians.
Yeah, and I think even people that dislike attorneys in general, like their attorney.
Very true.
But no, those of you that comment can let us know in the comments. But thank you for spending this time with us. And if you would like to get to know us in person, we meet at the Chula Vista Golf Course every Wednesday at 7 a.m. for the BNI Partners in Excellence meeting. So I look forward to seeing you there.